Hello, and a very good morning from the Catalan capital, Barcelona. If the massive sign wasn't enough of a dead giveaway for you, I'm currently at Estacio Barcelona Sants, the city's main railway station. Today we'll be heading across to Bilbao with the Spanish national operator Renfe aboard one of their Alvia services. But before we head to Basque Country, I think we need to see what Sants Estacio has to offer. As I've mentioned in previous videos, the inside of Barcelona Sants looks quite a bit like an airport, and indeed that is what it was modelled on. The station is hardly a sight to behold, but functionally I find it quite easy to navigate, and you'll find everything you might need before starting your journey. The station features full interchange access to both Rodalies or commuter lines, as well as the Barcelona Metro. Near the entrance to the Rodalies platforms, you'll find a number of staffed Renfe ticket counters, as well as self-service ticket machines. However, I won't be needing these today, as I bought my ticket online and can just display it on my phone. I found the selection of shops and restaurants within the station to be pretty good. This was rather helpful to me, as Renfe weren't offering any catering on any of their services at the time of filming, although this has since been reinstated. Anyway, as Renfe's Alvia services are high speed, we have to undergo a quick security check before we're granted access to the departure lounge. This just entails putting your bag through an X-ray machine and walking through a metal detector. If you've ever travelled with Eurostar, it's a very similar deal to that. The security check only took a couple of minutes. I'd recommend leaving it as long as possible before heading through to the departure lounge though, as all that's through here is some seating and a very overpriced cafe. The train is called forward for boarding about half an hour prior to departure. The service we'll be taking a ride on today is the 0850 to Bilbao-Abando, train number Alvia 438. One last scan of our ticket and we're granted access to the platform. The ride through to Bilbao today will be operated by this Renfe S120 electric multiple unit. These were built by CAF and Alstom and began operating under Renfe's Alvia brand in 2005. Each unit is formed of 4 coaches and they have a top speed of 250 km an hour or 155 miles per hour. I've booked a Turista Plus or Second Class Plus ticket today. At the time of recording, no Preferente or First Class was being offered on any of Renfe's services, so the Preferente section on their trains was declassified down to Turista Plus, with tickets being sold at lower prices to reflect the fact that no complimentary food and drink were being offered. Seating is laid out in a 1+2 configuration, consisting mainly of airline-style seats. I have Coach 5, Seat 5A today. Now before we set off, I think we should just take a quick look at what these seats have to offer. Legroom is nothing special, but still adequate in my opinion. The usual suspects are all present, with a footrest, litter bin and seat back pocket all being provided. A tray table of the large and sturdy variety is also provided. Down to the left you'll find controls for the entertainment system, although this wasn't being used at the time of recording. I must say, I don't remember anyone catching anything off watching a film, so maybe there's another reason for this not being used. Anyway, on the other side of the seat there's a button that allows you to make use of the seat's fairly decent recline. Unfortunately though, I found these seats to be pretty uncomfortable. The padding was quite poor and I didn't think that they were well shaped at all, which was disappointing. And last but not least, as you would probably expect to find, there are also some coat hooks, a reading light and a window blind. Now all that's left for us to do before we set off is to take a quick look at our route for today. We'll initially travel on the Madrid to Barcelona high-speed line as far as Zaragoza before undergoing a gauge change, more on that in a bit, and continuing on a diverted route via Pamplona as opposed to Logrono. We'll then eventually arrive into Bilbao-Abando station, where we're scheduled to arrive at 15:32. Travel time today will be 6 hours and 42 minutes, and we'll hit a top speed of 250 km an hour. And we depart from the dingy underground platforms at Barcelona Sants, bang on 8:50. We spend the first few minutes travelling through tunnels as we make our way out of the city centre.
On board the train. For security, Renfe perform extraordinary cleaning of the trains using specific disinfectants and hand-styled hand sanitizer.
Once out of the city, we waste no time in picking up speed as we head towards our first calling point of Camp de Tarragona. Having found the ride quality on CAF trains to be a bit hit and miss back home in the UK, I wasn't really sure what to expect from the units here in Spain, but I was pleased to find that even at top speed, the ride quality was silky smooth. Anyway, before the train gets too busy, I think it's time for a wander. The overhead racks on this train are fairly big, and I'd say they're capable of taking anything up to the size of an airline carry-on. However, should you find that they're too small for you, larger stacks are located at the end of the saloon. One cool feature of these trains is that the seats are reversible, so you're almost guaranteed to be facing the direction of travel. Between Turista and Turista Plus, you'll find the cafeteria, although, as I mentioned earlier, this was still shut at the time of recording. And then beyond this we find Turista or second class. As you would expect, this is in a 2+2 configuration. I don't know about you, but I think the coaches feel as though they're quite long. I did a quick search and at between 25.7 and 27.35 metres, they're no longer than what you'd find on most modern trains, so maybe it's just an illusion due to there being 2 separate saloons per coach. Wheelchair spaces can be found just to my right, here in Coach 6, next to the train manager's office. A pair of toilets can be found in the centre vestibules. And everything seemed fine to me, it was all nice and clean and working as intended. One last thing, can we just take a moment to talk about the moquette used on the seats? Now I can't be the only one that thinks it looks hideous and taints what is otherwise a very smart looking interior. Anyway, we're now just pulling into our first calling point, Camp de Tarragona. The station was purpose-built in 2006 to serve the then new AVE high-speed services between Madrid and Barcelona. As is often the case with AVE stations, it is situated some distance from the towns it serves. Next up is Lleida Pirineus. This is an example of an older station that has been upgraded to accommodate the high-speed lines, having originally opened back in 1860. About 2 hours after departing Barcelona, we arrive at our final calling point on the high-speed line, Zaragoza Delicias. Thanks to the power of high-speed rail, this is actually just under halfway between Barcelona and Bilbao, despite the fact that we still have over 4 hours of travel time remaining. From Zaragoza, we'll be travelling on the classic Iberian gauge lines. However, Spain's high-speed lines are all standard gauge, which is quite a bit narrower than Iberian gauge. To overcome this problem, it's possible to quickly change the gauge on the S120s using a gauge changer. I honestly have no idea how this works, so if someone more informed than myself wants to fill me in on the ins and outs of this, then feel free to do so in the comments. What I do know is that the S120 is able to undergo a gauge change at a maximum speed of 30 km per hour. I was expecting a lot of bumps and noise while this was taking place, but honestly I didn't really hear or feel a thing.
Y aún cuando estaba preparando todo le digo a Quique, yo para estas cosas como soy muy nefasta, digo échate un vistazo y mira tú más. Y dice me voy a ir a la estación. Total que se fue a la estación y nada, no había
And just like that, we're now an Iberian gauge train. It's quite a feat of technology in my opinion. The reason it takes so long to get from Zaragoza to Bilbao is that now we're on the Iberian gauge lines, our top speed will be 160 km an hour, and in reality, we'll be travelling much slower than that for most of the trip.
Deben descender del tren para hacer transbordo. Gracias.
We eventually arrive in the town of Castellón, which is apparently home to Spain's biggest solar power plant. It's from Castellón that we diverge from the normal route and head north on our diverted route via Pamplona. Despite quite a big diversion, it's only scheduled to take 10 minutes extra, due to much higher line speeds compared to the line we'd usually take. As for the reason for the diversion, well, I have no idea. As this is a diverted route, we don't make any station stops until we get back on the regular route. As such, we go flying through some pretty major stations, such as here in Pamplona. Maybe it isn't such a bad thing that we took a diverted route, as we're treated to some rather impressive scenery as we skirt the southern edge of the Aiguadas National Park. We then slow to a trundle for a while. I assume that this must have been timetabled as we don't incur any delay here, but boy is this a far cry from the 250 kilometers an hour we were doing earlier. As we come to the end of the diverted route, we pass one of Talgo's manufacturing plants, where we can see some of the new Alvia S120 Avril sets under construction. These trains will soon become the flagship of Renfe's high-speed fleet, and will travel at speeds of up to 330 km an hour or 205 miles an hour in service. A few moments later and we arrive at our final intermediate stop of Miranda de Ebro. Due to the diversion, we entered the station from the opposite side compared to if we took the usual route, so we reversed direction here. Once again, the scenery as we make our way north through Basque country is really quite picturesque. However, unfortunately low-lying cloud prevented us from seeing a lot of it. And at last, we find ourselves on the final little canter into Bilbao. So I thought that Renfe's S120s were a bit of a mixed bag. On the one hand, they're able to take advantage of the high speed lines where available, which cuts the journey times down, and for the most part, I thought the interior provides a fairly nice ambiance. But I found the seats were just rather uncomfortable and not a particularly pleasant place to spend over 6 hours. My ticket for today's trip cost me €47.30, booking about 2 weeks in advance. Now I think that's rather expensive. For reference, a Turista ticket would have cost me around €40, so it was well worthwhile paying the extra €7.30 or so for the extra space. I should also add that in the time since I filmed this, Renfe have renamed their classes of travel, but I'll leave more information on this in the description below, otherwise I'd be here all day explaining things. To me, it doesn't really make a massive amount of sense to travel by train between Barcelona and Bilbao. This is the only train of the day between the two cities, whereas there are several flights per day, and they only take just over an hour as opposed to the train which takes over 6. Even if you can get a base fare Turista ticket on this route, which is about €20, you're still going to be paying around the same price as you would on a budget airline such as Vueling, so unfortunately, unless you're like me and really want to take the train, it appears that flying is the way to go on this route for now. But I'm curious to hear what you made of this all, and would you be flying or taking the train to make this journey? Be sure to let me know in the comments below. We eventually pull into Bilbao-Abando station on time at just after 3:30. I do hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, be sure to help us out by giving it a like. If you're new to the channel, then you're going to want to subscribe and enable notifications as I publish new trip reports every Monday and Friday. Thanks a lot for watching, and I'll see you on Monday.